I'm Katie Nelson and I'm a games technology student. My project focused on looking on horror games on the commercial market and evaluating what made them scary, and then taking these key components after testing them with volunteers and recreating these elements into my own game to see if I could make a game that was scary. I've always had a personal interest with horror, so I watched a lot of horror movies and I played a lot of horror games, so I thought it'd be quite fun to make my own scary game. And it's also quite popular, horror games, on the commercial market at the moment. There's quite a few elements that made horror games scary. So first, you need to have a really good story. You need to draw in the player, but you don't want to overload them with storyline. It needs to be quite subtle, because you find that people, in their own imaginations, they're able to create a horror that's a lot more detailed than you could ever write down on paper. So I started with an agile methodology for testing. So the testing took place whilst I was building the game. So to begin with, a lot of people were becoming quite tense. But I didn't have any actual scares in the game. There was no enemy, so there was never any actual payoff. But towards the end, when I'd added the enemy and finished the game, a lot of people were getting quite scared of opening doors or going around corners, and they were actually jumping. And I also tested their heart rate throughout, and you could see that their heart rate was getting quite high, and it was rising about 15%. So I knew that it was quite successful. I'd like to improve the enemy AI, because it's quite stupid at the moment. You could probably outwit it, and I think it's more scary to have artificial intelligence that you can't predict. So you couldn't just see where it was going to walk and hide from it by avoiding its path that you know it's going to take. I learned some quite interesting things throughout. So what I was testing for initially was a rise in heart rate, because I looked a lot into anxiety responses, and people's heart rate will usually raise by about 15% when they're scared or tense. But one of my test subjects' heart rate actually went down by 15%, and by doing some research I found that she has a form of defense response, which means she would faint in a stressful situation,